Hi, I'm CJ North, and I'm here to talk about my next book, Grave Errors, a Why Choose MFM dark romance that comes out April 21st, 2026.
Welcome to Love Letters and Books, a podcast for anyone who loves a good story. This is a soft space to explore romance and books where no topic is too taboo. I'm your host, Casey, and this week I am sitting down with author CJ North to talk about her new book, Grave Errors, a Why Choose MFM dark romance that collides medical debt rage, vigilante justice, and forced proximity obsession. And today we're going to explore some of the themes behind the book, themes of debt, whether it's financial, emotional, generational, and our perception of worthiness. And I'm going to pick CJ's brain about why she continues to write these incredible 5-star books where people who have survived their own trauma still choose to protect others, even at great personal cost. CJ, welcome back to the Love Letters and Books podcast. I am so glad you're here.
Thank you for asking me to come on again.
So you're here today so that we can talk about your newest book, Grave Errors. And I was so excited when you sent me the early copy. And I'm just really glad that you're back and we can talk about it today. So for anyone listening, can you give us a little bit of an overview of this book? Like, what are some of the themes, the topics that get touched on?
It's about a young woman who works in IT, and she's fed up with the current state of American healthcare, essentially, because she almost died in a car wreck and was saddled with tons of bills. And so she got into hacking schemes. And so now she tries to play Robin Hood and hacks insurance companies as a way to help other people with their medical debts. And then our two male lead characters, they live in a totally different kind of world. They're heavies for a loan shark, and they are caught beating somebody up. And so they're told they have to take out their witness. But they get the wrong person and they abduct Willow instead. And they take her out to dispose of her, essentially. And then they realize at the last moment, oh, that wasn't her. But also, why is she saying she's going to give us money back? That's a little interesting.
I love that you've just dropped so many things so casually. So I'm going to backtrack so we can start unpacking them. First and foremost, I opened this book and we're meeting this incredible character, Willow. And right off the bat, we're seeing some of the things that she's doing. And it's really not for selfish reasons. She's really, like you said, playing Robin Hood. And I thought it was so interesting that this book is centering around the frustration with the healthcare system and the reality so many of us face, but we're almost ashamed to talk about. Just the idea of, I used to run a cancer center, and this came up a lot in the support groups of like, great, I survived cancer. Now I'm bankrupt and I might be unhoused and I lost my job. And it's just this reality that no one talks about. The idea is you have health insurance, you're absolutely fine, as if our reality isn't that we're doing all the co-pays and everything else. So I just want to drop us in there. So there's some fantastical elements to the story, which we will get into, which I absolutely loved, but it's rooted in something so many of us can relate to. That frustration when, you've survived something and you open a bill and it's like, oh, you survived, but the rest of your life, you're paying interest on this thing. So right off the bat, you walk us into this tension. And then, as you casually mentioned, there are two main male characters. So tell us a little bit more about the dynamic in this book.
So the two male characters, Riker and Ezra, they're also paying their own kind of debt in a way. So that's kind of a major theme, is just the things that you'll have to do to pay somebody back. And also just the lengths you'll go to help somebody that you care about, because one of them isn't paying a debt for themselves and they're paying it for somebody that they love. Also, what you're willing to do for perfect strangers. So that's mostly Willow's cases. She's helping people that she works with or people that are completely unknown to her, but she sees their GoFundMe pages and she says, all right, I'm going to help that one, this next scam that I pull.
It just brings up such an interesting question, right? Of like, where are we responsible? Where are we connected? Where are we interdependent? Where are we part of a greater community? And where is that fierce individualism that's basically like shoved down our throats, that as long as you're okay, you don't have to worry about anyone else. And so, yes, in the setting of this like dark love story, we also have this question of our characters, like, what are you responsible for? And how can you use what you have to show up and make a difference in the world? Or do you just hoard it for yourself and say, well, it's not my problem. It's not my health issue. I had to take care of me first. Right. And I feel like very often in politics these days, that's very much the conversation that goes on. And if you've had any kind of, I don't know, life changing experience, accident, health issue, you might have a very different experience with it, right? Like you might see it very differently of this can change your entire life, not just the illness or the accident, but what you have to do for the rest of your life or how it takes your life off the path. So I just love that you dropped us into this space. And then you also gave her this set of skills. Like you're kind of cold open. I notice even in Beast of the Bayou, like we're cold opening in these women in these work environments. And it's just the frustration that like every woman can relate to. So I know no one else has read the book yet, right? It's not even out, but we are cold open into this very intelligent woman's workspace, and she's being treated just, I don't know, every sentence in the beginning of the book, I was like, yep, that's pretty much how it goes when people are asking you for help and don't listen to you. So
Yeah, the last time I shared a snippet of that, I just kind of offhand put in my story that's like, F you, Vince, in particular. I'm talking about you in this because I was the IT help desk for my company for about a year and a half. And there was occasionally most people were fine, but there was this one guy, he just would not let me touch a thing. And so eventually I was just like, you know what? You can look stupid with your printer plugged into your monitor. I don't care anymore.
exactly. Well, I love this world that has been built, and I felt like we really got to know our characters, Willow, Riker, and Ezra. And they're in this very tense, kind of complicated situation. So, one of the other themes in this book is forced proximity, captivity, right? I'm not trying to give anything away, but that ends up happening. And their relationship develops in that way. And it feels like it's very surprising for everyone. That was how I experienced it as a reader. Like they enter into something thinking one thing, and then they feel very differently than they initially thought that they would. So, this is a why choose relationship that we're brought into. And it's MFM. So the men involved are basically having a new experience. They're basically saying this is like the first time that they've done this. But that brings up so many questions for each of the characters. And I wanted to know why you wanted to explore that particular relationship dynamic in this book.
Well, I think I just like to play on hard mode when I'm writing. So having that kind of dynamic, because if the two men aren't together, then that's also a little stickier because they're having to just be very comfortable with certain things with each other if they're going to be all together for fun times.
What do you think that brings up inside someone? Like, what are the questions that your characters are asking themselves in those moments?
Well, there's definitely a little bit of because they're pretty macho guys and they work in the underbelly of the world and they're both blue collar workers in their daytime jobs. And so it's kind of poking at their masculinity a little bit and how comfortable they are in their own sexual identities and how they see themselves. One of them even asks himself when he's picturing the other MMC with Willow, he's like, am I gay? No. Am I bi? No. So he's having these questions and these kind of self-exploratory kind of things going on in their heads and what they're okay with and what they wouldn't be okay with. And even for Willow, because she has her own past. And so finding one guy appealing enough to actually have a relationship with is hard enough. Finding two, that's even harder.
Well, another thing that came up in their dynamic, which I also think was a little surprising, was the caretaking and the nurturing, and whether it's feeding or making sure someone's emotionally safe or they're physically feeling taken care of. That also comes up in this dynamic. And so we're seeing all these different sides of the characters, but then we're also seeing someone receive it. And so Willow is in the position of very much receiving grace, understanding, care. So these words sound kind of funny given the dynamic we're talking about, right? But kind of being accepted, being seen, being understood. and how new that can be for someone. Even if it feels good, it can also feel new or challenging in the moment. So I want to just touch on the idea of revealing something about yourself, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, something from your past to someone, and why that is so powerful in books, why it means so much, why it's so much a part of our storytelling when someone is kind of opening up about something maybe they're not ashamed of, but they've been hiding, or, and what that feels like when they open up. So, can you bring us into that part of your storytelling and why those little reveals were so important for their relationship?
Well, I think it definitely helps the reader analyze themselves and things that they may keep under wraps in their own way that they go about relationships. I know not everyone's always going to be comfortable revealing every single bit about themselves and every little ugly thing from the past. And like that's definitely a valid position, but there are definitely certain parts that are important. So for Willow, she's afraid of being vulnerable because of her past experiences. And so these guys, when they're all forced into this situation together, what are you going to do all day? You're going to kind of pick each other apart and try to learn about each other, especially because they all have some very interesting stories that they want to get to the bottom of. And so she's realizing they're kind of pulling back these layers on her, and she doesn't know how she feels about that. And so it kind of creates this kind of panic in her. And I think that would be very real to a reader, that when someone's prodding at something that's kind of a sore spot, and you have to decide how much of yourself you're going to reveal, because it opens you up to more love, but it can also be up to being hurt again.
And also seeing yourself differently. Sometimes when we're sharing a story that we think we know so well that it's like ingrained in our bones, but we're saying it out loud to someone, it sounds different. And I think
Definitely.
that that's all, right. Doesn't that come up? Like it does. And you learn more about yourself every time you do that. I also thought it was interesting in their dynamic for these two guys to be on the receiving end of concern, because at some point she is concerned about them of,
Mm-hmm.
you guys are in a very messy situation. Are you aware of it? Almost like, do
Right.
you realize the situation you're in and how this is going to impact your future and how that can feel, right? Like we can carry our burdens, our wounds, but then when someone shines a light on it, how that sort of changes how we might approach it or how we move through it. So there was a lot of back and forth in this very fast paced book. And I love your writing. And I think I'm taking a little detour now because I just feel like I need to. I mean, I only met you a few months ago, right? Like I only met you because I started talking to you about Beast of the Bayou, and then I read Jump or Fall and this. And I have to tell you, like, I know you're a new writer, but you are like my automatic buy at this point because of your writing style. I'm sure you want to die right now, but I'm just going to tell you that
Thank
you
you.
definitely automatic buy because your voice comes through so authentically in your writing. And it just, I don't know, I just love it. So, are you feeling as a writer that you have a very clear, like, pacing method voice in your stuff? 'Cause I know you're also working on another book at the same time. I don't know. I guess I just want to hear about your process.
Yeah, definitely. Because now I'm at the tail end of finishing. Pretty much just going to say that the first draft of the next book is pretty much finished. It's maybe 5 paragraphs at the most to finish that one up. And so I need to dive into editing and all of that. And so basically, I take the approach of I make a bullet point outline, get about halfway into that, and then start writing and try to hit certain points. Like, I don't really like to do too much filler in general. If I don't feel like a scene has a true purpose for either character development or plot development, then I don't really include it unless it's a fun bonus chapter. But that's a little different. Yeah. And then I just try to speed through as best as I can. Sometimes I can get 200 words down, and sometimes I can get 1,000 down, and I just try to show up for it every day as much as I can. You have to make it exist. You can't edit something that doesn't exist. So just kind of
Yeah.
word vomit onto the page. You're gonna laugh because Beast of the Bayou was a gap book that I just wrote for fun when doing other things. I wrote this entire book just because I needed to give myself a brain break from the super dark post-apocalyptic book. So I shelved that and then just wrote a whole new book that was just indulgent fun.
I love
So
that. I love your process of like your in between books, and they're all 5-star reads. So that's kind of interesting to me. Well, one of the things you said earlier in the interview is that a core theme of this book is what you are willing to do for others. And this book really takes us on a journey, like the others that are closest to us, but the others sort of like in a tertiary space, out in the world. So, why was that such an interesting topic for you in this book?
I've never liked that kind of attitude of, well, F you, I got mine type thing. Like I'm set, my people are set, and so nobody else matters. But I think part of just if you want to exist as part of society, you have a responsibility to care about the people who make your existence in life possible. So I think that's a just basic humanitarian position there that all people are each other's responsibility.
Where do you think you first learned that lesson? And I don't mean to pry too much into personal life, but have you ever had experiences in life that really solidified that for you?
I think it's because I didn't have a lot of that I had that kind of the opposite type thing. A lot of life was always just taking from me. And so I was always willing to give. And I'm still just, I will always give too much of myself to other people, even if they don't deserve it, because that's just the kind of person I am. I get that actually from my dad and his mom. And they're just those type of people that we're easy to get stomped all over because we just have too big of hearts that we just want to take care of everyone and look after everyone.
Well, as a reader, you take us on a journey through the book, but I'm wondering as an author, when you're writing a book about this, about what you're willing to do for other people, but you're telling me, hey, this is something I'm aware of in myself. What kind of a journey does it take you on when you spend so much time and energy in this headspace where you're focused on this dynamic and what these characters are doing? Did you learn anything or take anything from that experience?
Mostly just more angry at the system because I'm about to be going through the ringer again with my own healthcare needs and like, all right, I'm about to shell out thousands of dollars again to be blown off or pushed aside because I appear to be just a young, healthy lady. So what could possibly be wrong? I was like, oh, why do your labs look like that? That's weird. Take the supplement and pay me $500 again. Cool. Why am I paying for insurance if it never covers anything?
It's a good question, but it's so crazy that we don't talk more about it because it actually does affect so many people. And I think that, in my sort of real life, I work in medical media and we talk about this a lot, sort of the medical gaslighting. And one of the projects I work on is helping people script how to talk to healthcare providers to get what you need. And if you can't get what you need, how to get it documented. Because I think people don't realize how important that is. And people can find themselves in this loop of, did you drink enough water? Okay, come back next visit. I mean, if you want to just have
Yeah,
like a rage fest after we're done recording, you and I can just go back and forth and
please.
talk about like healthcare stuff. I tell people, so I work with like the top doctors in the country, and every now and then they'll like ask me a question. I'll share my healthcare experience, and they're like, that's actually insane. I'm like, no, it's actually normal. That's the point. Like, this is what
Yes.
so many of us experience. But the other thing you mentioned was sort of the outsides maybe not reflecting the insides, and how very often as women, that's just taken for granted of, well, you seem fine. I've actually had doctors say that to me. You seem fine. What's the big deal? And it's just like,
Right.
sir, do you think I took a day off of work to come here just so you could do a vibe check? Like, I literally want my labs back so we could talk about them. You know what I mean? Like, let's
Exactly.
do some math and science here. And I'm very much getting that feeling from you as well of like, hey, it is important. There is this core frustration that I think a lot of us are feeling where the healthcare costs are going up, but the experience is going down. And then when the people are frustrated, where do we go? What do we do? And so then you almost get this like vigilante character who's like, I've been through the worst possible thing, and here's what I'm going to do. And it's just such a powerful message because also at any point she could have just chosen to only take care of herself. But it's almost this keep what you have by giving it away type of energy that she introduces.
I was just going to lament on more of the struggles of how a lot of healthcare providers will just talk over you until you shut up and go away.
I mean,
So,
let's lament. I would love to lament with
okay.
you, CJ North. Let's talk about this for a second because I feel like you could say, well, why are you talking about this? Because I think books often reflect what's going on in culture and society and politics. Like that's very important. And
Definitely.
I'm going to bet that most people listening to this podcast who pick up that book are going to feel like they have a healthcare experience that's completely mirrored in that and how frustrating it is. I
Definitely.
personally, if we're lamenting and it's a circle of trust, my favorite thing is when I have to diagnose myself, I bring in all of the paperwork explaining the diagnosis. I hand it to them. I tell them what it is, and they say, I don't think that's what that is. I'm just like, okay.
Yep.
But it gets even better when 6 months later, they're like, so remember when you brought me that when you told me that, I actually think that's what it is. But in the meantime, they've charged your insurance, you had a million copays, and you've had to go on this like wild, crazy experience to just get where you could have been from the very beginning.
Yep. And definitely COVID was a big setback, at least for my personal issues, because back in 2020 and this summer, something happened to my knee and my hip. And I was just suddenly not able to walk more than about 3 minutes at a time for a year and a half. And that was when pretty much anything non essential, you're not going to be seeing a doctor. No one's going to be paying attention to you unless you're pretty much dying. And so, me just suddenly becoming almost disabled for no discernible reason. And then, when I finally did see a doctor, she just kind of talked over me a bunch and felt around on my knees. She's like, no, I'm not seeing anything. I said, well, can I maybe get an MRI? Because like I'll pay for that fine. I know it's going to be expensive, but I want to know what's wrong. She's like, well, insurance won't approve it until we do an x-ray. And I don't think you really need an x-ray. So why don't you just do physical therapy and come back if it doesn't get better? Cool. I don't think I can pay $200 every single week to go to physical therapy. So I just kind of sucked it up and dealt with it. And then I got pregnant and something changed with the elasticity in my joints. And I was okay for a while until I wasn't because I was just huge and pregnant. And now, ever since then, I still get issues, but nobody takes it seriously because now I'm not debilitated anymore. So I just spent a year and a half not able to walk for no reason.
And the response is, what's the big deal? Like that kind of what's the big deal energy. And it's so frustrating. And then when you try to communicate it to some people who have a very different, almost like bespoke concierge healthcare experience, they're like, what do you mean? Just talk to your specialist. And you're just like, what are you talking about? Like, no.
I don't
And
even
so
have a primary.
I know exactly. Like it's 2026. Can we all grow up? So it's just that common frustration. And I think I just keep touching on it because it was such an interesting starting point for this story of what activates people. And then another theme that has come up in your books that I've seen is the scars that people carry internally, externally, and what that feels like when we're revealing those scars to people, right? The first moment they see it or touch it, or we share about what happened to us. So, why do you think that's something that's kind of woven through your writing and so important?
Well, I think definitely because most of my issues are just invisible. So, like, you can't really see it. And so, when you write a character that has the visible evidence of their pain, so that you can say, look, here, I have this thing, and it's kind of proof in a way. So, it's kind of just adding visibility to something that, I don't know, for myself, it's always invisible. Nobody's been able to see it.
Well, one of the other themes you mentioned was a debt that we have to pay. And I thought that that was a really interesting theme, right? It could be literal, it could be figurative, it could be emotional, it could be tactile. So, why was that a topic you wanted to explore in this book? And also maybe the debts other people have that we take on for ourselves, like the burdens that we assume for others.
I think it comes down to just fairness in a way. And because you learn one of the characters, their debt, technically, it doesn't really make sense. It's more about proving a point. And I think a lot of times these things are about proving a point instead of fairness. And so you have raw dollars that equal this thing, but oh, now there's interest. And so that's determined based off of a couple of factors, usually just greed. That's the big thing. Or proving a point, like nobody's going to ever take from me is essentially what the one guy, his point is for that debt. But it's just these arbitrary things that people assign value to and what you want to get out of other people.
What do you think your characters value in this book, and does it change throughout the book?
I think they just mostly value the people that they care about. Even the two guys who are just, they're kind of rough with each other. They give each other crap all the time. And the one guy's always dragging the other one to eat weird stuff and he hates it. But they're friends and they have somebody that they can relate to, because a big thing that comes up is they have these secret double lives. And so they can't really have romantic relationships that are normal because they have to hide that part of themselves, or else they're going to get scared away or someone's going to call the cops. So they definitely, they want to be close to people, but their factors make it impossible.
Well, throughout the book, there was a theme of unworthiness. And it usually occurred when a character was confronted with someone or something that they wanted. And there was that dark little internal monologue, that voice inside of us. And to your characters, it was saying, you're not worthy of this. And so I guess I wanted to talk to you, not even about your characters, but about that idea that we all have and how often it comes up in those moments where we want something and like that's our first response. And maybe the parallel throughout other parts of your book. So, just that concept of unworthiness. Like, why did you want to write about that in this story?
Well, I think I wanted to write about it because we're always in our lives and as humans having to prove time and time again that we are worthy of other people caring about us. We have to justify our existence to have things like food, shelter, care. A lot of times I see just these horrible takes from people where if somebody's not the perfect picture type person, if something happens to them that's bad, then it doesn't matter. They're subhuman. It doesn't matter that person got killed. It's like a big thing that's happening right now up here is there's a lot of missing and murdered indigenous women. And so there's this concept called no humans involved that circulates through a lot of law enforcement, especially. So if someone has drug addiction issues, or if somebody has been unhoused or has any other kinds of things, we just devalue them. And so they're worth less. And that's common throughout so much of humanity and just how we view other people. So you have to always justify your existence. And for people to care about you, you have to be a peak human.
It brings up that concept of othering that so often happens. And again, it happens in the world. And I'm so glad you mentioned the issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women in Alaska and in other places as well, and how often it gets overlooked. But that othering, I think it just infects people and they get very comfortable with it. And I would see it sometimes happen in healthcare spaces where there was almost this like virtue testing that would come up of, oh, that happened to you. What did you do wrong? And so, like, that's the other side of it. And it's like, no, I'm just a human being who has a human body and things are going to happen. And this didn't happen because I'm bad or unworthy or anything like that. It just happened because I'm human. And so, I really do like the message of intrinsic worthiness. And every time we have that moment, which we all do, because we're all human, where we other someone, it's like taking that step back and reflecting on yourself and saying, God, why did I do that just then? Because if someone did that to me, I mean, that would be devastating, right? So it is really interesting how you touched on it in this story. And that kind of brings me to your other book. So since we last spoke, I read another book of yours called Jump or Fall. And I know I love your writing. I had no idea I was going to fall in love with this book this much and these characters. So again, I know this is painful for you and I compliment you, but I just need to tell you that book was like exactly what I needed. And I don't know what that says, but it was just this beautiful intersection of trauma and tenderness and growth and connection and survival and thriving, all of those things all at once in that book. And I don't know, I felt like I wanted to touch on it again because the last episode, you and I touched mostly on Beast of the Bayou. And in this one, I think we're exploring that world where there's really high stakes and people are processing their trauma in real time in front of someone who loves them. And like, what a just an intensely beautiful story that is. So, with all of that, is there anything you would like to say to anyone listening about your incredible book, Jumper Fall? 5-star read, by the way, to anyone listening. That is absolutely how I felt. I ate it up.
Thank you. Basically, if you want a glimpse into a terrible future world with a lot of things that parallel to the way that the world is right now, and you'll also like a little bit of sci-fi, some nerdiness, and you might want to cry a little bit, then Jumper Fall might be a great book for you.
Perfectly said. I loved it. Well, can you give us a little information about Grave Errors and when this is available and where people can find it?
Grave Errors will be available on April 21st, 2026, and it'll be on Amazon and Kindle Unlimited.
Incredible. Well, I am so excited for everyone else to read this and fall in love with your characters the same way I did. But here's the thing, you have this other project cooking in the background, so I want to give you a moment to talk about that. When are you thinking that will come out? I don't say this to rush you. I say this because I'm always so impressed by you and I am curious about your process. So, when is your next book coming out?
That one I'm aiming for the summer, but just knowing my process and how I kind of get delayed on things, and also summer is the only time in Alaska that it's worth ever being here. So that 3-month window is very important to go outside. So that it might end up being in the fall, but it's slated for this year.
Well, I love all the updates you give on social media. I really feel like I'm falling in love with your books even before they're published. So, to anyone listening, just a reminder, I will put all of CJ's links in the show notes so you can find her. And I would say pre order and pick up Grave Errors. You will be absolutely thrilled with it because I know I am. So, CJ, thank you so much for joining us today. It was really nice to talk to you again.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Love Letters and Books, a podcast for anyone who loves a good story. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to follow, rate, and review this podcast on your favorite listening platform. You can find me on both Instagram and TikTok at Love Letters and Books. And if you're interested in being a guest on Love Letters and Books, suggesting your favorite author, or just want to write in an original love letter to yourself or someone else to be read on air, please send me an email at lovelettersandbookspodcast@gmail.com.